Hi, greetings from my new apartment in Spain, my lovely balcony, which is an interior balcony, and that's something we're going to learn about today. So, I'm going to do a series here on the whole process of going to look at apartments before we choose one to buy. Today, I'm going to talk about understanding the listings. What are the terminology and the warning signs we need to look for? Then, we're going to talk about communicating with agents, which is a challenge in another language. Then, we're going to talk about assessing the area, assessing the building itself as a whole, and then assessing the individual unit. And once we've done this series, I'll put everything together and we'll follow one property from beginning to end so you can see how the whole process works together. All right, I'm excited. Let's get started.
We're going to focus on Idealista today. There are other sites to look at listings on, but for today's purposes, this is all we need. And I have mentioned this before, but just a refresher, when you go into Idealista, the main site is in Spanish. But if you go all the way down to the bottom, you can choose to switch to English. And what that does is it automatically translates the information in the listings, which is super helpful, if not always accurate. Because we're going to talk about the terminology and getting familiar with the way the Spanish talk about things, I'm going to stick with looking at apartments because you'll find the widest variety there. So there's some things you're going to see a lot of. You're going to see interior and exterior. You're going to see with lift and without lift. We'll talk about those in a minute. One of the things you'll see when you go into one is that it's secondhand. And I just think that's kind of funny because in the US, we would never say new or used when referring to homes. Most of the time, you would assume that it's been lived in before. And if it's a new build, then we specifically label that. Well, here they label it secondhand, meaning that it's not a brand new apartment and someone else has lived in there. Then there's just some really funny things that happen with the translation sometimes, which you see in this next one, occasion and novelty. I've seen that a lot, and I don't know what the Spanish phrase is. Let's see if it'll show us. It tells you what it was translated from. So if you switch this, okay, ocasión y novedad. So maybe that's something in Spanish. So this is the kind of thing where you can use this as a vocabulary improver. So this obviously means something that doesn't quite translate to English, but now I'm curious to know what it is. All right, let's go back to English. And there are some things that are very common. So you're always going to see interior or exterior. And what that means is where the unit faces mostly. So exterior is going to face onto a street normally. An interior will face into a courtyard. However, that can mean a lot of different things. So for example, if you face the street and you're on the first floor in the center of the city, that's going to be very busy and very noisy. Whereas if you're on the interior, maybe it's not. However, I'll show you some examples. Interior could mean a lot of things. It could mean you face a really nice big park like this, where the other apartments are quite far away, so you're not looking right into someone's window, and maybe it's a little quieter than it would be if you were facing a main street like this one. Now, it can also mean facing a tinier courtyard like this, and this one over here is a good example, so you can see how concrete this is. So there's going to be a lot of noise bounce off that. I can tell you this from personal experience. Interior can also mean it looks into a little tiny space like this, or even over here, there's several you can see. Now, some of these might have interior and exterior facing rooms, but if you're sleeping on this little courtyard and anyone is talking or playing TV in their apartment near you, you are going to hear everything in stereo with an echo. Now, we've also talked about this in other videos, but you're always going to see with a lift or without a lift. And when you see something on every single listing, it tells you a couple of things. One, that it's important, and potentially that it's important to buyers. To me, it's important for resale. So bear in mind, we're in Europe, so the ground floor is ground zero. So if you're on the fourth floor without a lift, in US terms, you're on the fifth floor, which means you're climbing a lot of stairs every time you're going up to your apartment. When you're trying to carry groceries, or if you want a new piece of furniture, those things have to get into the apartment. So this is where this kind of thing really matters. It does seem that a lot of older buildings are putting in elevators. I did have someone say to me the other day, this one doesn't have an elevator at the moment. And that's also a sign to pay attention to, because that could mean that the community is going to put in an elevator and you as the new owner will have to help pay for that. It's just a good exercise to read the descriptions of a bunch of different places, because other things will catch your eye. So here we've got exterior and very bright. Great. We've got a terrace, an independent kitchen. So I'm guessing that's separate, not open plan. Here we have fourth floor of the building without elevator in big capital letters. So again, this is something that is clearly very important to buyers. South facing, and that's something else you do tend to see up in the listing, is where the orientation is. And that's important for just getting light, because when you're living in very tall apartment buildings surrounded by other tall apartment buildings, you want to know if you're going to get some winter sun. I'm looking for one that says individual heating, because that's something I see a lot. So here you have hot water by electric thermos. Now, obviously that has not translated. That must be that you have your own hot water heater. Optional storage room. Storage rooms are super popular, so that's always a bonus when you're looking at listings. This is another thing to look out for. I've only seen it a couple of times, and it can slip by you very easily, because I have actually already set up a viewing for this property this morning. But if you scroll down to the basic features, you can see here it says no heating. And if you recall, in our other videos, we were looking through photos and looking for clues, and I would say, oh, look, there's a heater. Now we know it has heating. And if we go through this one, first of all, we can see that it's pretty rough looking. So there is a radiator here. So maybe that just means that there's no boiler. Maybe it means that the building has been converted from a central heating to individual, and that has not been installed in this unit. And I don't know how extensive that would be, but it seems there are pipes. So that is a question I will ask when I go see that today. Another example of just interesting things you find out when you're looking at listings. So I had been looking at a list of listings, and I saw this apartment, Cabo Naval 1, and I saw Cabo Naval 3. They were both listed at the same price, but this one was a 3-bedroom and the other one was a 2-bedroom. However, when I looked more closely, I could see that the photos weren't the same, but the furniture was the same. So it's got to be the same unit. And this looks like it was listed by a private owner, and then now it's been listed by a real estate agent. So I'm going to see this one this evening, and I'm curious because I thought, well, why is it 3-bedroom and why is it 2-bedroom? Who's made the mistake? But if you read the description, you can see originally it had 3 bedrooms and they knocked a wall down to make a big living room. So that is an opportunity to add back a bedroom or add a bathroom to make it 2-bed, 2-bath. Or so when I get inside, I'll be able to see the layout and be a better judge of that. But that is a good clue to look for as well. There are a few warning signs that I look for. We've kind of talked about a few, but these are some really obvious ones. Whenever I see a photo of a balcony that's shot downward and it's cut off, this one's not so bad because you can actually see through the railings. It shows you that this other building is quite close. So to me, that says they want to show you that it has a balcony, but they don't want to show you what the balcony looks at. That's a little red flag. I'll call it an orange flag. Another one is this, which is that it was without a habitability certificate. So I wasn't really sure what that meant in Spain. I know that, you do have to have certificates of occupancy in the US, but you don't always know the reasons why there isn't one. This triggers your need to ask that. So first thing I did, of course, was just look up what is a habitation certificate in Spain, found this great advisor's website, and they talked about that every building has to have it. And it says here that it's important to have for the resale, and it is the responsibility of the seller to pass it on. So by noting that it doesn't exist in the listing, are they saying beware you're buying it without? Because that's going to be a lot of trouble, according to this article, to reinstate it, especially if you don't know what the reason is for it not existing. Could be that the building was built without permission. It could be that something has happened in the building to make it not meet current standards. So that is going to require a little more digging. So overall, understanding our listings is really helpful. Using these searches is also really helpful. You can set up searches. You can set it up for houses, for apartments for different areas. It will send you a daily roundup, or you can set up instant alerts. And if you have the app, those will come right to your phone. By tracking things that are interesting to you, or even just tracking anything in general, you'll get emails which will tell you, hey, one of your favorites is no longer listed, or there's a price reduction in your search. So these are really useful things for getting to know how the market is moving, how fast things are coming on, how much is staying on, if prices are going up, if prices are going down, et cetera, et cetera. And lastly, another useful feature of Idealista is the chat. It's not always super successful, but it is a way to reach out to listings without having to make a phone call. And I'm going to talk more about communicating with agents in the next video in this series.
Thanks so much for joining me in another video. I hope you learned some more about how to best use listings to your advantage when you're starting to research properties, and I will see you in the next video.